Hey, welcome to this new tutorial series on creating various different hard surface elements such as armor plate, medieval armor, sci-fi suit elements, any sort of hard surface um, things we might want to create, all done directly within Zbrush using a combination of many different tools and techniques and methods, which there are now, that are all interchangeable and can all be used in conjunction with each other. So with R7, obviously we had Zmodeler, which adds a new dimension to the workflow, and also the power of Zremesh, dynamesh, the insert brushes, ultimate control over polygroups and creasing on a per edge or per face level within Zmodeler. Like it really has come together now, I think, in R7. So I don't even what's gonna happen when Zbrush 5 eventually comes out. It's I shudder to even think what's going to be introduced. I don't know. Just plug the software straight into your head, and your ideas then just come out through your ears or something. I don't know. What Fair and the lads have planned, but I'm sure it's going to be exciting, and as usual, quite amazing. So enough of the fanboy shite, and on with the show, as they say. So this image in front of me here is the latest kind of personal work I've done. Chaos Beastman bust. Anyone that's been following my channel can certainly see a theme, a Warhammer sort of theme. But yeah, so this was entirely created in Zbrush, including all the hard surface stuff, the armor and everything. So before I would have just taken a low res version of the organic sculpt, goes either over to max, built out the armor, hard surface elements over there, goes it back across, creased, hiding and unhiding faces and everything, which used to be a bit of a pain in the arse, and then kind of went on with the workflow as usual. But now we can just do it within ZBrush, without having to go over there. Just build a very basic base mesh. It doesn't have to be any amazing topology or anything. Replete with holes and complex curves or whatever. Build it quite simply. Dynamesh, crease it, dynamesh it, sculpt on it, retopologize it, do whatever the hell you like, and all in a kind of a non-linear fashion. So you can just hop from one tool to the next, back and forth. Dynamesh, Zremesh, model, whatever. It's so interchangeable that my head is hurting. But yeah, so I'm going to break this up into probably three different parts. The first part I'll concentrate on using Zmodeler, and I'll show an example of creating like a sci-fi type sort of armory piece or panel or whatever it happens to be, and then medieval or fantastical fantasy type armor like the Beastman's armor here. So they'll all use similar methods. I'll use Zmodeler in the first section, then I'll use the topology tools, like topology brush, and the older Z-sphere topology tools as well, and a bit of Zremesher, dynamesh as well. And then in the third part, maybe we'll show some panel loop techniques used as well in conjunction with dynamesh, and Zmodeler can be used on your Zremesh mesh or your panel loop or whatever. So as I said before already, there it's all interchangeable and can be just mashed together. And
I'll also show
the flexibility,
a couple of slice curve
makes it all worthwhile.
And Zremesh kind of techniques, which can be quite useful as well.
So yeah, so that's pretty much it. The rest of this was just this started from a sphere, as everybody seems to be doing the last while with dynamesh and everything. You don't even have to worry about base meshes or anything like that. You can just drag everything out from a sphere, dynamesh, and just keep going. And then eventually, as I did with this bloke, it got to a stage where I wasn't getting the resolution that I wanted here for the detail around these two eyes to get the forms I wanted. So got to a stage where you know, it wasn't going to work for me. So a few clicks of the button, Zremeshed it, and after using the Zremesh guides brush, and that's it. Then I can continue working, and there's no headaches. You know, if this was all built already, um, you know, using old school kind of modeling methods, and then you realised, you know, the topology needed to be changed. It's a bit of a nightmare going in and cutting and adding edge loops and all that sort of carry on. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And then this was just rendered in Keyshot. So I did an illustration of it as well. I did some some Keyshot render passes and brought them all into Photoshop as usual. Yeah, nothing new there. And then just pretty heavy paint over job, and post processing and all that sort of stuff. Brought some fiber mesh over from Zbrush. Even all the drool here, you can see that was just done with a Sketch, which was really quick to do, easy and straightforward, and the result was pretty good. Just put a refractive material and Keyshot on it, and all this stuff was just poly painted, using the kind of classic ZBrush poly painting kind of airbrushing techniques based on sort of real world airbrushing techniques. And that was pretty much it. Yeah, even the eyes created in ZBrush. An inner sphere for the sclera and the iris, and then I poly painted that, and then I used mask by intensity and just sculpted this detail out. You can kind of see, I was already at 100 there. You can kind of see the bump detail around the eye, and then it's just an outer sphere, sculpted around that, and then the material, same material here, this refractive material was on the outer eye, and then there's a subsurface material on the inner eye. So you know, even in traditional rendering packages, you know, you'd be building an eye and then you'd have to mask everything, and you'd have the you know, you'd have the iris masked off from the sclera, and then you'd mask the reflection off from the cornea across the sclera and all that sort of stuff. But I didn't bother. Like, this was just quick to set up, drag it, poly paint it, and drag a few materials on over in Keyshot. So that is pretty much that. And here's the project here, so you can see it's you know, 30 million. So before going to Keyshot, it's quite important to you know, decimate it as much as possible. And here's the final armor that I'll give an example of. And this was all just started from Zmodeler, very basic Zmodeler mesh, created pretty quickly. This one here then was just taken off this one. You know, all I did was tagged a few faces, Q mesh, dragged them out holding control, broke them away, and then just Q meshed out and just created this new armor piece. A few insert brushes, one I created myself here quickly. These were created quickly, and the same again, just insert mesh. All very simple stuff, and quite effective and powerful. And that's pretty much it for the introduction. And in the first part, I'm going to show them the Zmodeler techniques. So let's say you have your basic, you know, your part, whatever it happens to be, panel, armor, whatever it happens to be. You have a model here in Zmodeler. So I just modeled this as, you know, an example. Didn't, you know, a couple of minutes. Pretty simple, basic Zmodeler tools, all of which I show in great detail in a lot of my other videos. So I'm not really going to go into them here. I'll just cover a few of the sort of ones we need here just for this particular workflow. So our basic box model shape here, nothing too fancy. Topology doesn't really matter that much because we're going to be dynameshing, or if you want, remeshing this as a sculpted mesh. In this case, dynamesh. Later on in some of the other videos I'll show using Zremesher, you know, to get particular low poly shapes. So you have your subdivisions, and you can work up through them then, and also use Zmodeler as well. So just like I said in the introduction, it's a lot of it is all interchangeable, and all the tools being used together in conjunction. So here's a basic shape. So I have everything, as people know from watching my video, this is my UI. I have everything that I need to hand, so I'm not always digging around in menus over here. And anyone that's just learning ZBrush, I recommend experimenting and just going through all these palettes here and finding out what's where, because even the best of us get lost in ZBrush, especially when you have your own custom UI and you know where everything is on your UI, so you mightn't remember where stuff is. So it's a good idea just to find out where everything actually lives within ZBrush. So back to what I was saying. Yep, so the crease stuff is all over here, but in my case it's over here to hand. So I've set the crease tolerance to 85 degrees and the crease level to 3. So if I crease everything now, everything that falls within that threshold, which is just what I want to give me a great start. So when I subdivide, I'll get those hard edges. So if I press D to go into dynamic subdivision, you can see where all my creases are, and I have the dynamic subdivision slider up here dragged onto the UI as well, set to 5, crease level to 3, and you can play with these depending on how you want your edges, how hard, crisp or soft you want them. So that's once it reaches the threshold here, the crease level, when you subdivide past that, the edges will gradually get softer and softer. So I find a difference of 2 between them to be workable for cases like this. So there's our our base creases put in using the tolerance here. Great start. So press D. I'm just pressing D to drop in and out of dynamic subdivision mode. So let's say, for instance, we want this edge here to be creased as well. Oops, I'm still on insert. So hold down space over an edge, crease, crease edge, and then when it highlights white, then we can crease it, and you can see we can do this obviously dynamically, which is great, without committing to subdivision levels as you traditionally would. So this is really helpful. And let's say we want to crease here as well, and let me see, I'd like to put creases around here as well, so I can just so I'll just put some creases here and maybe across the top here, and that's already creased, and then you can see that gives us a nice little kind of an inset. And then I might want to also crease these ones, and you can leave the polyframe off if you like, and get a better idea as you're creasing how it's going to look. Now you can see here, do I see this edge here is sharper than this edge? That's because there's an edge loop here, whereas there's none here, so you have to bear that in mind. I have a video on the channel there that goes over using creasing and control edges and how they affect each other, so it's worth taking a look at that if you're wondering why this is happening here, why this one is softer than this one here that's right beside it. Yeah, that's the reason. So yeah, so I might also want to crease these here, and maybe these ones here, just to sharpen that up. And here's another important thing to mention. You can see here this weird artifact, and that is because these 3 edges, this one, this one, and this one, are all creased, and this 4th edge here isn't creased. So when it's subdividing the algorithm, it's pushing and pulling, and it's stretching itself because it doesn't quite know how to subdivide this area, because it's 3 edges are creased and the 4th one isn't. So just simply crease that edge, and that will resolve that problem. So you can see it's still on this side, but it's gone on this side, so we can just crease those ones as well, and that will get rid of the problem. I don't think this one was creased, so we'll just crease that, although you might want to actually prefer that one that wasn't creased. Gives it kind of a or did I? Oh no, that was the one below. Sorry, yeah, I'm gonna actually crease that. So crease that, yeah, and you know, so if you are running into that problem, that is the reason. So you want to just go around and crease these edges to alleviate that tension when it's when the mesh is subdivided. So let me see what else might want to, crease there and there, or else leave that curved, and I'm just going to mask those out and move and just to round them off. Or I also could have used, instead of going out with Zmodeler, I also could have just used hovering over an edge and go to move and infinite depth, and that will you can move like that also. So both ways are viable and handy ways to move. So that is, yeah, so let's say we're happy with that. I just want to show one other trick, shall we say, that I don't think a lot of people are aware of. So if I go to move mode, transpose, and start dragging, snap to that vert, hold down shift to constrain it, and then snap to the end vert. There's a handy little feature. If you hold down alt, and you see the transpose line disappears. So if you hold down alt and the center white circle, you can actually dynamically kind of bend stuff depending on the resolution. So in this case, it works nicely, and the way it works, it'll bend from start and end points of the transpose line, and this will be the center obviously, and it'll bend from there. So you could also do the same thing here, and just hold down alt, so that way, be like in Maximize modeling. Max would model this planar, and then you use two bend modifiers to get the same effect. So it's actually a really, really, really handy feature added to the transpose line that a lot of people, I don't think, are aware of. Now you can notice when I did that this is one thing, if I used bend and max, that wouldn't happen. It would kind of, it's kind of crumpled up the surface here a bit. There's a lot of dings and dents in it now, which might not be desirable, but it's also related to the creasing. But the thing about this is, this workflow, we're only doing this to get us a nice base to dynamesh and sculpt on, so I'm not even going to worry about that, because I can just sculpt away those weird creases and dents using H polish, smooth, and this other excellent brush that I've recently come across. I can't remember where I downloaded it, but it's called JAC Smooth Edger, and it's really good. I'll show an example of that later on. So that is the basics of getting up to this stage. We're happy with everything, let's say, apart from this weird stuff. But that doesn't really matter, because remember, we still are in the sculpting package, and we have all our sculpting brushes, and I'd rather you could spend more time here on the topology before it was dynameshed, to try and clean some of the stuff up, but that defeats the purpose of what we're doing. We're trying to get away from traditional kind of poly modeling. So if you're modeling all this, it would take a lot longer to model in your 3D package, get it all perfect and crisp and everything. And it's much easier to just get it up to this kind of stage, and then when it's dynameshed, just sculpt out those imperfections,
or even better yet,
do whatever you want with them,
you could
because
have
we
just
have all the
did the
brushes at our
deformation
disposal.
using the that alt technique after the dynamesh, and then that weirdness wouldn't have shown up as it did. So that would be an even better way, you know.
I'm just going to drop out of dynamic subdivision, and because it behaves strangely if you try to dynamesh when that's turned on, and I'm just going to subdivide it a couple of times using the normal subdivision control D. And yeah, so let's say we're happy with that. Maybe jump up one more level so it's nice and smooth. And I'm going to dynamesh. One other handy thing to do is you could duplicate this first, dynamesh it, and then reproject the sharper one, the original one. If your dynamesh comes out jagged, depending on what poly count you have, you can whack this right up and you won't get these artifacts, but if you do, you can always have your duplicate subtool and you can just project the detail back on. So I'm going to dynamesh at, I might just actually go to 0.5 and dynamesh that, and that's preserved most of the detail. You can see if I zoom right in, it's a bit funky. So for the purposes of this, I'll leave it at that, but I use this, as you can see, dynamesh master as well as dynamesh. Dynamesh master is very handy because you can set your poly count, obviously. You know exactly what it's going to be, so you can kind of gauge it a bit better rather than dynamesh. The original dynamesh is based on the scale of the subtool, so you know it's gonna depending on what resolution you set, and then the scale of the subtool, they will both kind of bounce off each other, and that's the result you get. So I do use both of these because dynamesh master only goes as low as 100,000, so I kind of use both of them together. I like to have them here rather than jumping in and out here, which does me nothing. Right, so we're dynamesh there now, and you can see dynamesh now also, well, I think since maybe R6 preserves your poly groups, so you could also set this up really quickly in Zmodeler using the poly group, poly loop, or whatever, the poly group tools, and set up all your poly groups, and so that you're going to have them then when you go into dynamesh, and then you can use features like the polish by features or polish by crisp edges, depending on whether you have creasing or poly groups or both. So that is that. And then once we're in here, as I say, you can sculpt all this stuff out. And I'm gonna leave it. Actually, the resolution isn't what I want, but as I say, it's only a demo here, so you can just bump this up and or else project it back on, depending on your resolution. So now we can just start using regular brushes. So one handy brush to use is you start smoothing and then let go of shift. It's gonna retain the form, but it'll smooth out poles and stuff like that. And then that brush I talked about, the JAC Smooth Edger, click that, and I've only started using it recently, but it seems to me like it's a brilliant brush, but it seems to me like it's a combination of smooth and H polish, because it seems to, if I start smoothing and go up to an edge, you can see here, oh, I went over the edge there, it starts to smooth up to the edge and retains that sharpness. And that might have been the best example. Where else can I do it? Yeah, you can see there where it's going along the edge. Very, very handy. So I can play around with that as well. I can't remember exactly where I downloaded it, but you can just what's the guy got? Let me see. No, sometimes it'll attribute the brush to whoever. Maybe in here. Whoever made it. I'm guessing some bloke called with a JAC in his name. Not to worry anyway. JC Smooth Edger. So you know, we can also BMH, that's Ma Mech A, so we can look up Ma Miguel Angel Hernandez, or Michelangelo Hernandez, quite a well-known ZBrush user, beta tester, and all-round skillful bloke. And that's one of his brushes. There's his name there, Malachus the Black on ZBrush Central. So I like this brush. So I'm just going to reduce the size and the intensity. I broke me Wacom tablet, changing the nib there a couple of days back, so I have another one on order, so I'm stuck back on a crappy mouse for the moment. So I'll try and demonstrate as well as I can, considering. So with Mamek selected, I'm going to start dragging out, and then I'm going to hold shift, and that's going to not do anything because the Z intensity is too low. So I'll start doing it again, start dragging out, holding shift, and that's going to give me a straight line because I've shift held down just like Photoshop. And then once you have that dragged out, you can press the one hotkey, and that's repeat last, so you can kind of, without having to stroke over that again, you can get a nice straight line, and good for you know, for cutting in panel lines. So drag out, hold shift, and then press 1 a couple of times, whatever, and that'll give you nice panel lines. As I said, now 3 times, but yeah, so there you go. You can, and from there then, you know, we're still only we've only a single because it's dynamesh, no subdivision level, so we can use our insert brushes. So let me see what I use. Toaster parts, machine part. I love this one here. I am machine parts. Joseph Trust, I think. Maybe it's not this one, but yeah. And then just you know, do whatever you like there. Just start dropping in parts. Which brush is it? Oh, the IMM kit or something, I think it is. What's it called? Oh yeah, IMM model kit. There's loads in this. A lot of them are already smoothed. So, you know, the likes of whatever, these kind of bits, and see if I start dragging out there, it's gonna rotate. So see that this bit here is weird, so we can just grab a clip circle center and start dragging out and set it up, and then just press Alt, and that'll give us that'll clean up that. Now you can see we have some weirdness going on here. So it's because of the nature of the clip brushes, because it's trying to clip here, but because this isn't straight through, you can see this is over here. That's why that's happening. So I try from this side, see if there's a different result. Hold down Alt, and that is the same. But yeah, you can always just re-dynamesh. Might even go a bit higher. 0.6 re-dynamesh, and yeah, see the way it's gone weird. So I'll sort of smooth that out first. Probably even just undo that re-dynamesh and maybe smooth it out first. Could even use that smooth edger and smooth that out, and then dynamesh again, and just smooth again, and at least it kind of, you know, you can sculpt away there, but at least it kind of cleans up that hole. And another brush that I like, that's in Lightbox here, is it's one of the trim brushes that ships, Trim Hole, and you can just start it. You have much better control over it when you're using your tablet, but as I say, I'm on a mouse here, so what it does is it's going to trim a hole based on your camera view. So if I turn the camera, can see it's behaving a bit strange. So yeah, it all depends on your camera, but it is a nice brush. Just eats in, and it's good for creating sort of mechy type holes. So let's see. Let's say we're happy with that. We're happy with the shapes, and we're finished dynameshing. We can divide, and we can use whatever brushes we like then. So let me see. I have some Mike Jensen's brushes from a couple of years back as E3D mech brushes. So I can try some of these out. You know, go around and put your detail on. These ones are, I think they're slightly before insert brushes were in Zbrush, so these are just like old school kind of alpha type brushes. But you can also, oh no, it wasn't actually, because he has, or maybe they're from Hard Surface 1 and Hard Surface 2. He has all these ones, and these are all inserts, yeah. So let me see, I'll just pick anything here, but we'll have to step down and delete those subdivision levels, or you could freeze them, but and it'll reproject back on when you unfreeze, but not to worry. So you know, we have some of these inserts. I suppose the thing that, you know, inserts over these kind of mesh based details, where it's dependent on resolution, the insert brushes, you know, are already at a set resolution when they're created. So and then, you know, they have their poly groups as well, so you can use this merge similar groups, and then depending on, you know, all objects the same poly count will be merged into one group, and then just Control Shift click them and split hidden, and then your you know, you have a separate subtool then for your inserts. So that is pretty much it for the kind of sci-fi type armor. And in the next part of the Zmodeler section, I will just show the more medieval and fantasy type armor. Right now we move on to the fantasy slash medieval type armor, which is rather than the kind of machined perfect surface sort of sci-fi stuff. This is going to be, you know, battered, beaten up, and sort of handmade kind of armor. So this was the finished piece from the Beastman illustration I showed earlier on at the start. So dings, scratches, you know, various bits of damage here and there, to kind of make it look as weather beaten and worn and battle scarred as possible. So what I did was started off just with Zmodeler, create a base mesh to you know, to get the basic forms and proportions and whatnot that we want in. And it's very simple stuff, simple modeling. So I've created this piece first, the shoulder piece, main shoulder piece armor. I could have created this in 3D Max or whatever, but you know, it's quick to do here in Zmodeler. You know, some simple extrusions, and using the various tools that I obviously go into a lot more depth. And you know, anyone that's been watching my channel knows that the other, the Rhino and the Plasma Bolt are those long series, step by step, in depth, to show all the Zmodeler tools, so you can check them out. So I just used them just to make these. They didn't take long. This one was built first, and then this one was just built off this one. So I selected these faces, Zmodeler brush, Alt tag the faces, then Q mesh, holding Control, which breaks them away, then separated them, or then Q meshed again to give it thickness, then broke them away into their own subtool, created this part, duplicated that using transpose move, created a few holes in this, scaled it down, got into position because it's the same curve, obviously, because it's a duplicate. And then just broke some faces away again using the same process I mentioned earlier, as in a few minutes ago. Broke these away and then gave them thickness, positioned them, and all pretty simple stuff. So we're not worrying about any topology or anything. We're just looking for forms and shapes, and that's all. So then next thing I did was I creased all the edges in preparation then for subdividing a dynamesh. So I usually start off here just using crease. So all these tools that I have in my UI, I'm not going to go in and show where they all are over here. It's a good idea yourself to explore. I do in other videos, but it's a good idea, the ones I mentioned there. It's a good idea to go in here yourself and just explore all these palettes and sub palettes just to find out where everything lives in Zbrush, just to get to know the program a bit better, because a lot of people get panicked when they first start up and they just feel so weird and alien in Zbrush that I think they lose a bit of heart, and it's well worth your while to soldier on, because it's incredibly powerful software, and also good fun. So yeah, crease is in here. I think it's in geometry, crease, and there's all that stuff there just dragged onto my UI. So I usually set the tolerance, because I build these with mostly 90-degree corners. So that's what I'm looking for when I crease, so I can just set the tolerance and the crease level down to 2, and I'll just jump in and out with dynamic subdivision pressing D, and I have that level set to 3, so that's going to go past the threshold here 2, and you can set this lower and this higher, or this higher and then this even higher again, depending on what effect you want on your corners, how sharp or rounded off you want them, how smooth. So when I have that done, then I'm just using dynamic subdivision, as I said, to jump in and out and check. So there might be some creases that this global creasing missed, and you can just go in there with Zmodeler edge creasing and manually and specifically target edges that were missed by the global creasing. So when that's done, then I'll jump out of dynamic subdivision, because generally you can't, if you try to Zremesh or dynamesh from a dynamically subdivided mesh, it'll just Zbrush doesn't like it. So just when you're happy, jump out of dynamic subdivision and just Control D and just subdivide to whatever sort of fidelity you need, and then just dynamesh. So you can see here I'm using dynamesh master, and they have dynamesh. So for stuff like this, I'll usually use dynamesh master for this process that I use. So I'll check, this poly count here is 97,000, so the lowest dynamesh master goes is 100,000.1. So that's not going to be good enough for sculpting, so I'll probably just set this to maybe 1 million, or even 500,000, and then put project on. And you can also test out this polish as well, so you get a clay polish effect. Then I'll dynamesh, give that a couple of seconds. And it is finito. So there's a resolution we have, and because we're not going to be pulling this around anymore, I'm just going to use dynamesh once, and then if I want more detail, I'll just subdivide it. So I'll leave it at that for the moment, and then when that's done, the next thing I'll do is I like to start off with H polish on these lovely smooth surfaces, and I'll set the brush size not too big or small, and in circular motions I usually just quite heavy handed, I'll kind of just scribble, for want of a better word, on these nice smooth surfaces, and you can see it kind of breaks them up and sort of puts undulations into the surface. I don't know if you can see with this material I have applied, but so let's do
check something. You can switch between Z sub and Z add obviously for different effects, but yeah, so circular motions, scribble on the mesh, and it gives us undulations. And the reason I do this is because, you know, when you're lighting CG surface, you know, something like this old piece of armor battered up, or even if it was a concrete slab, stone wall, a big metal oil drum, whatever, this, I find this works. And the main reason I'm doing this is for reflections, so that when light bounces off this surface, it's going to be dispersed unevenly, sort of, because obviously the surface isn't perfectly smooth. And that's the same thing if you have a noise texture map or displacement map or whatever. You'll notice that you know, when you render, your lighting is going to be, your reflections, sorry, are going to be more interesting, because the surface that the lighting is hitting is breaking up that reflection. And I'm all for that. So once I've that done there, let's see if you can probably see it, and you can probably see it a bit more there. See what I'm talking about. We get an idea of what it might be like there under real true 3D lighting. So once I've that done, then the next thing I will do is grab the trusty trim dynamic brush, and the popular technique of just going over these edges and breaking up that that CG kind of chamfer bevel. And you know, you just go in here and just vary it a bit, randomize it, change your brush size, you know, up and down, leave bits out, don't just have a continuous noise all over it, contrast it, sort of, you know, make it look, it just makes it look more interesting. So that's what I'll do then. I'll give this a pass, and I'll go around all these edges, and just make sure I kind of hit them all. And like what I talked about earlier on, when you subdivide these Z modeled meshes, if you're getting weird bits where there might be poles or whatever, you don't have to worry about it, especially on a piece like this that's meant to be a battered piece of armor. You can just sculpt that stuff out, so it's no problem. It means we're not worrying about our topology or our edge flow, or going around and pushing and pulling verts around till our eyeballs explode, which is always a good thing in my book. So when I've that done there, that'll be the next pass. You know, I'd go around and do that, and I'll also, you know, you can change the fall off on trim dynamic, bring it up or down to get different effects. Or what I like to use as well is this, if you go into Comet, open Lightbox, into trim, the trim folder in brushes, and this trim smooth border, and that's more of a sort of a trim dynamic on steroids. It just attacks the surface a bit more aggressively, and you can also use that then for varying the edge wear a bit more, and also you can pick out areas like that might be have a bit more extreme wear damage on them, you know, and give them a bit of love. You can even you know, chop out some of this a bit. That's a bit too much, but don't be afraid to just go in there, because you can always, if you do that, you can just hold Alt, you know, build it back up, knock it back down, whatever. It's all to add sort of variation in the damage. And then another brush I'll use for this sort of stuff, and this applies to stone and things as well, is clay tubes. And this put the square alpha on, the default square alpha. It will, you know, give you a kind of a layered kind of a, oops, onto Z sub, it'll give you a layered kind of a chipped effect. And this works especially well for concrete or stone or whatever. So that would be the next pass to do. And then after that, then
You know, I'll obviously spend more time than I've just spent. I just wanted to show you as an example. When that's done, then I will usually then put some surface noise on it, sort of global surface noise. So I'll store a morph target first. You also could have stored a morph target before this damage. It's a very good habit to get into, storing morph targets and using the morph brush then to erase out some of the details. So there's also layers here in Zbrush which I'm not hugely fond of. I find that they're quite buggy and sometimes they ruin what I'm doing, or I might lose work, or just might mess something up, or just drive me mad, or kind of get me out of the flow of what I'm doing. So a lot of the times I avoid them. Not all the time, I will use them, but I find as well sometimes if you stack too many of them up, it starts behaving a bit weird. So if I am using them, I'll usually use one or two, get them to how I like, and then I'll just bake them down. So I'll start a morph target, and I'm going to add some noise and noise plug and erosion or dense. I'll choose dense, good for this kind of metally stuff, and I will raise the strength, and I'm just going to get rid of the basic noise here. It's mixed in by default, so I'll set that to 0. You know, and straight away then there's a decent enough kind of a starting point. So you can play with the strength and the scale and the curve here, play around with them, see what sort of results you can get. So I'm just going to leave it at that, but I encourage you to definitely play with the curve here. So with that applied, we can still switch. Sorry, I don't think I stored one. Sorry, I haven't actually baked it onto the mesh yet. It's still just sitting on top of it in a way. It's not applied to the mesh yet. So depending on your resolution, you know, you're going to lose a bit of the fidelity of this. I could subdivide again before I apply this, but I'm just going to apply it there. You can see it also inflated the mesh. See the way it kind of inflated the mesh. So just something to be mindful of as well. So I could also drop the strength. Well, I'm going to just leave that on there, and I'm going to bake all this down now. I could have put this on a layer, but you would have had to apply it to the mesh, because the layer won't respect the noise unless it's baked to the mesh or applied to the mesh. So yeah, that's baked down there now. Applied to mesh. Yeah, I already applied it to mesh, didn't I? Or did I? No, I didn't. So apply that to mesh, and the next thing I'll do then is you know, I'll delete that morph target and store one again. So this is going to be the base kind of layer, I suppose. I generally will do that. I'll instead of using layers, or if I'm not using layers, I'll start a morph target, add the detail until I'm happy with it, and then BMO, morph brush. You know, mess around, paint some back out if it's too heavy, or use layers. Usually one or two at a time, bake them in, and then when I'm happy with all that, you know, I'll keep baking morph targets and layers. So that's the stage I'm up to now, and the next thing I'll do is standard brush, drag rectangle, and then I've imported a couple of these, I suppose they're just bump maps, kind of scratch maps or whatever. They're not great, the quality's not great. I've just put the radial fade up here and alpha modify, and I'm just going to use them as an example, but they're not really great. Nowadays I've been looking into some of the surface mimic. They're like kind of raw displacement scans of real world stuff rather than just kind of photographs that are manipulated into bump maps. So I advise anyone to check out those surface mimic maps. The detail in them is way better than photograph derived bump maps. So we have our morph target stored again, and just to show it, I'll probably just put this on a layer. So I'll add a layer and just call this just metal damage. You can see here the layer's recording at strength of 1, and then I'll just drop the strength way down, and I'll just start to drag some of this on. You can see here that's a scratch map, and it's defaulting at popping out, so I'm just going to undo that and just reverse that so it goes in. And you can see here the detail is rubbish, so I'm just going to subdivide this. Sorry, I'm going to delete that layer first. You always want to be on your highest level before you create a layer. So I'll also do the same with the morph target. I'll store a new one and add a layer and metal damage. So I'll try that again. You can see there the details a bit better. And the morph target is stored, and also the layer. So BMO for the morph brush, and now you can see we can paint that out. And you can drop your strength on the morph brush and get me tablet going again there. There's the mouse. You know, paint some of that stuff out, and then just just the layer strength. And you see we can, by using a combination, you can get it looking. Sorry, just going to go into record mode again. Oops. And standard brush. So we could just drag a few of these out, not being too precious about it, because we know we have our layer stored and our morph target. So this is just going to add a bit more damage. And we could also then change the alpha for one of these other ones. So I might choose this metal one, and same again, put the radial fade up, and you could also just, this isn't a scratch one, so you can Z add or Z sub it, and just go in and add some detail here and there, and then we're going to say, oh yeah, we're happy with that. And same again then, BMO morph brush, and if you so choose, in and paint some of that stuff out and play with your layer. See the way that's I'm at 0.5, and when I turn off record it shows it at 0.5, but if I turn record back on, it jumps back to 1, so just beware of that. Just something to be mindful of. So you could play around with that for a while, and you could add another layer, or you could just bake that and move on. So in this case, I'll just add another one, and now because I've added another one, that one's gone out of record mode, and the 0.5 is displaying properly there now, and you can still play around with this, or you can put this negative, and that'll reverse the effect of these grayscale images. So the next thing I do, I'd use those maps to kind of get some more general sort of scratches and metal wear and dings, dents, all that sort of good stuff. And then this layer here, oops, didn't mean to do that. This next layer here, I'll just call we'll just call it scratches 1. Scratches 1, and I'll use this orb cracks brush, and set it fairly low, and then I'll just kind of, I'll go a bit mental then. You can also um, delete your morph target and store a new one, or just rely on your layer. So I'll just kind of put that into record, and then I'll just start it. Just maybe raise up the intensity. Size is too big. Raise the intensity, drop the size, and then I'll just start to kind of cross hatch, sort of scratch across this. Now I would, when I'm doing this, I would definitely do this on a morph target, because this is just going to be, you know, randomly cross hatched all over the armor. Bit more, slightly more care taken when I'm really doing it, but you get the idea here anyway. You can vary the, you know, you have your brush Wacom tablet pressure, so you know, that'll do for, you know, size, you can see there, and the trail off or the strength. So, you know, I'll continue to do that for a while, and then I can play around with the layer again, but you get the idea. You saw me doing that a minute ago. And then when I've that layer in, and I've messed with the morph targets and painted a bit back out, and got the layer just right, I might bake them down and start from fresh with a morph target and a new layer, or I might just add a new layer on. And then what I'll do is, with orb crack still selected, I'll go in and I'll, you know, I'll do more specific kind of scratch wear, specific damage. I might even pick some of these that are in here, maybe just, you know, reinforce some of them, or, you know, go to corners, just add in, I suppose, hero scratches, if you will. Just pick them out there. And sorry, I'm getting a bit scribbly there, but this the past where I'd spend more time kind of, as I say, getting those, you know, more specific scratches, and look for areas of your mesh, just like if you're sculpting organically. What they call, I suppose, happy accidents. You know, leftover kind of areas of detail from a previous bit of sculpting. You might say, oh, that looks great, I didn't even realise that was there, but then you might go in and bolster up that sculpt and sculpt more on it, and kind of work like that. Sometimes you get lost in a sculpt, and you're just doodling away for hours on end. Yeah, getting a bit scribbly again, but yeah, so that's basically the idea. And most importantly, I suppose, is to build it up like this in layers, or passes of damage, you know, starting from wearing off the edges, bit of general noise, then some kind of general scratches and stuff with alphas, and then the orb cracks, or even damn standard brush, a pass of that, and then a more refined pass, and then you can keep going like that, just building up that damage and making use of layers, and especially morph targets. So after that, then you know, I might concentrate on adding in some of these details with insert brushes. So you can either, to use insert brushes, you can't have any subdivisions, or else you can freeze subdivisions by, in here, geometry, freeze subdivision levels, or you can just delete it. So I'm just going to drop a level actually. See if we lost much detail. No, I'll leave it at the higher level. Just didn't want it to slow down too much with the recording. Delete lower. Sorry, I forgot to layer caveats. So I bake that and get that weirdness going on, but you can just come down to poly paint and turn off colorize. So bake those layers down. Now I'll delete lower. And now you know, go in and do me insert brushes. So you saw the rivets these rivets here, and you can see there's these holes underneath the rivets. So what I would do for that is I like to just use standard brush, drag dot alpha 06, Z sub, select your size, and then you can just, sorry, I'm just going to turn up the Z intensity. You can just drag it in there or turn up the intensity, or else just press 1, repeat last, and then because we're using drag dot, it's going to be the same size every time, and our alpha is on there, so you don't have to adjust the fall off, but you can also adjust that as well to sharpen it up. Then I'm going to have some of them in BI, insert half sphere, and then I'll just drag out a half sphere, and if that's happening to you and it's doing your nut in, just turn off solo. So I'm just going to undo that, and with insert brush as well, if you start dragging and hold control, it's going to snap to the size of your brush, and that'll keep your insert brushes uniform. So I'm just going to drop that draw size and hold control, hold control, hold control, turn on polyframe, unmask, and then select that, and I could go to split hidden, and now they're broken away to their own subtool, and then I could just subdivide them, smooth them off, and they're in their own subtool. And then the next thing, just curve tube, and these little kind of leather straps that are holding the armor down. So your red brush size is the size of your curve brush, and your blue brush, when you hover over the curve, is the size of your curve brush to move the curve around. So just going to move transpose, and you could move that into position, back to draw, and maybe drop the draw size a touch. Sorry, it's going to snap back to that curve, should have did that first. You can move this around with your blue brush, but for global kind of moves, it might be easier to just move it with the transpose. You can even just rotate it a bit and move it into position. You can get it sort of roughly into position, eyeball it, and then just delete that curve, and then you can just use your move or snake hook or whatever, and just move it into position, and then that's ready. You can subdivide it or dynamesh it and then sculpt on it. Then for the spikes, all I did was just switch to a cylinder. Before you make it a polymesh 3D, come down to initialize, and just drop the divides down, and just drop that to the lowest, and just put that at 4. Or you could use a Q cube as well. Make polymesh 3D, snap it into position, and then just mask off these, invert the mask, and scale. Just click on the white circle and shift. Scale, and scale can be a bit weird like that sometimes, so just keep pressing 1 then to repeat last if that's happening to you a million times. Right, so let's say we're happy there. So there's our spike. Snap the camera so that you're looking head on at it. Then go to brush, create insert mesh, new brush, and then you can save it over here in brush, and it'll save it whatever name you like. Then we go back to our tool we were working on, and now we have our insert mesh, so we can start dragging it out, and same as the other one. Control, I'm just going to turn off dynamic subdivision. Control, and you can just snap them into position. Just put one here. So we're happy with that. Merge similar groups. which should have worked. Sorry, these I'm just going to solder that tool out again, and I created that actually in the Rivet subtool, but not to worry. I'll just hide them and say split hidden, turn on solo, alt click on them, activate them, and then we could just you know, I could dynamesh them at 0.1 dynamesh, now they're dynameshed, and then we could just maybe polish them a bit, and then we could just start again using the same sort of techniques we were using earlier on. Trim dynamic, H polish, and then, you know, grab the snake hook and, you know, move them around, or, you know, pinch the top in, do whatever you want. I'm just going to move these over, just click on the normal, and I'll just move it by eye. You know, let's say you had all them looking as crap as this, like an ice cream or something. So let's say you had all the spikes in position. Back to your armor. Then you just come in with your orb cracks brush, and then just you know, just sculpt around these. Then make them look a bit more integrated, as if they were just sort of hammered into the armor. So I'm not going to create a finished piece around here. I've already done that. I'm just kind of showing you, giving you ideas. And yeah, so I think that's pretty much all I wanted to show for the armor. It's pretty much the techniques that I used to create this. Same thing with the, you know, these. I just created an arrow simply using Zmodeler, and then just created an insert brush and just popped them around as well. This was just an alpha that I imported, or had from an earlier project. I think the environment, 40k environment making off tutorial I did. So I just used that in standard brush, drag rect, and selected it there, and just this was high enough that I just dragged it into the surface, and just to create that bit of detail. And that is pretty much it for this kind of stuff. Yeah, so I'm gonna in the second part of the series I will show some manual retopology tools, topology brush and Z sphere, old school topology. And cheers for watching this one, and I'll catch you in the second part. Alright then, cheers, thanks, good luck.